Thanks. Thanksgiving. Giving thanks. Thanks must be the first word. It must be my first word. And I want to suggest that it be your first word. It must be the first word I humbly propose on the lips and in the heart and soul of every human being on this planet. I, of course, speak the word to express my immediate and deep feelings at this moment of this parliament of the world's religions. It's a word I express to everyone who has had a part, large or small, in making this particular parliament happen. And that means giving thanks to a huge number of people, individually and collectively. It means giving thanks to my colleagues, those Homo sapiens with whom I've worked virtually every day of the week and for so many long hours each of those days over the past 3 years, particularly my co-workers in the office in Chicago and in Toronto. With members of the Parliament's Board of Trustees and members of the Board of Directors, the Steering Committee, and all the subcommittees here in Canada, all working to make this event possible. It means giving thanks to all of those persons, organizations, institutions, governments who have provided support for this effort. And it means giving thanks in a special way to you. Those of you who have made a decision to attend, to participate in, give up your time and money and energy to be a part of a gathering devoted to something as radically idealistic, but as practically necessary as the claim that there is greater promise for ourselves and for our world in being as inclusive as possible in all that we do, rather than being divided and excluding. And to the even more radically idealistic but practically necessary claim that love is the most powerful instrument to sustain our lives, to enrich all of our lives, to bring about the change in our lives and the life of the world that we sense is needed. Thank you. I mean thanks, however, in still a more profound and deeper sense, a more comprehensive sense, a more intense sense than any immediate feeling that you and I have at this moment. I mean thanks and giving thanks being at the very core, the very heart, the very center of our existence as human beings in our world, and especially so at this moment in the whole history of the earth itself. That is what I want to contend is at stake in giving thanks. Not just for our own salvation or the salvation of some dimension of existence, not the salvation, for example, of humanity, but for the salvation of the continued life of the whole world. Giving thanks is the recognition, ultimately, that we, every single one of us, are not self-created, not self-sustained, but rather that we, every single one of us, and all of us together, are dependent for our lives and the life of the world on what is other than ourselves. Giving thanks is the recognition that our existence as human beings is a gift, not of our own making, not of our own sustaining. We live and have our existence by the gift of that which is other than ourselves, and by taking responsibility for the well-being in return, the gift of others, for other human beings, for other sentient and non-sentient creatures, and for the earth itself. We as human beings are, that is, fully a part of nature, but as evolved creatures in nature with the capacity to think and to appreciate and to weigh and to value and to decide. We also have the responsibility to care not just for ourselves, but more to give thanks for the creation upon which we are so fully dependent, and to care for that creation so that it, that is the earth, can continue to be the gift of life itself upon the earth. And it starts, humanly, with giving thanks. But here's what is at stake now at this moment in the life of this very unusual planet in the cosmos. For the first time in the history of this evolved planet, we humans have the capacity not just to destroy ourselves as a species, not just other beings as a part of creation, but to destroy, to eliminate, to put an end to everything that has life on this globe. And here's what's at stake right now. Unless we change our ways of being in the world, we will destroy our world and make meaningless all that evolved throughout our long natural history, including our human history on this planet. The religions of the world, I contend, have a special role in making that fundamental change happen. The religions of the world and the adherents of those religions can and must be the central agents of change. But to do that, religions of the world have to change themselves. At the most fundamental level, and probably the most radically, I want to suggest that religions must now reverse and change their ways of relating belief to action, of relating theology to ethics, of relating doctrine to practice. Historically, religions have insisted that their beliefs, their theologies, their doctrines determine and shape their ethics, determine their rituals, the practices, the behaviors, and actions of their followers. But in some cases, maybe many, that way of doing business religiously contributes and leads to practices and behaviors and actions that are destroying the earth. And that cannot continue. Instead, I want to propose that religions must look first for the kind of changes in practice, behaviors, and action, their ethics, that are now required to save the earth, and then proceed to reformulate and even revolutionize doctrines and beliefs so that thought and action can be mutually supportive in saving the earth. This would enlist their members to be engaged in that salvation process. Next, the religions of the world must reverse and change their old ways of thinking that they can do this world-saving work by themselves, separate from other religious and spiritual communities. They must now join together in this cause of earth's salvation. This means interfaith and interreligious movements can no longer be treated as religious and spiritual luxuries, as add-ons to what they do, as something on the fringe of their faiths. But that collaboration among the religions of the world is now an absolute necessity. Next, the religions of the world must reverse and change their old ways of being accommodating to the powers of the world, be they political or economic or ideological, insofar as those powers contribute to the destruction of the earth. So, for example, religions of the world must join together in taking on the false religion of free market capitalism. A false religion that exploits the earth and divides the world of people between rich and poor. They must together condemn and work to overcome the subservience and corruption of democratic polity to the powers of economic forces. They must together stand against the tyrannical political and economic and cultural forces that are oblivious to their part in the death of the earth. The religions of the world must also reverse and change their ways by playing by the rules of the world's dominating powers. Must draw on the depths of their own teaching about compassion and justice and peace and be subversive. Yes, subversive in undermining principalities and power that are leading to the earth's death. Religions need to recover the power of civil disobedience, the power of nonviolent action, grounded in love and commitment to the common good and the life of the earth. Similarly, the religions of the world must reverse and change their ways of tolerating inequality wherever it appears, discrimination on the basis of race and gender, any and all violations of human dignity, the mistreatment of animals, the destruction of the earth's life-giving resources, and instead be in the forefront of movements that challenge these forces of evil. That's what they are, evil. My colleagues, it all begins with giving thanks, with thanksgiving. Thanks to each other. Thanks to all of that gift of life that are a part of our interdependent world. Thanks to all of those who are committed to the salvation of the earth. And thanks to that holy reality, that sacred reality, that life-giving reality on which we are all dependent. It was and is the first word. It must also be our last word. Thanks.